If it's one thing I know from the time that I've been stepping, that's if you got something you want, you gotta try to embed it in your mind. Every single minute and every second lies another opportunity to get your shit perfected. That's how it's gotta be, that's how it's gotta be. It's time for everyone to get up out of your seat. That's how it's gotta be, that's how it's gotta be. I never really had much, believe I got this beat. That's how it's gotta be, that's how it's gotta be. Treated like free lunch.
Hello everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox Tuned In. That's right, we're going to get into it, but before we do, as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. You know, I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. And with that being said, here's a quick word from our sponsors.
Organic herbs and botanicals, skincare and edibles, wellness for body and mind. The Brothers Apothecary. Fine teas and remedies. Ronald Records. From indie gems to classic hits, discover the heart of local music. With live shows all the time, up close and personal, and regular releases on their in-house label. Ronald Records. Supporting the community, one track at a time.
All right, thank y'all so much for watching. Again, shout out The Brothers Apothecary, Ronald Records, and Portland Water. Thanks for keeping us hydrated. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get on into it. Here is today's guest.
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Radeskiii.
Hello.
How's it going?
Yo, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. And, thank you so much for sitting down with us today and talking about your album.
Absolutely. I'm definitely honored for the opportunity. I appreciate you having me again since the last interview, and just happy to be here. So.
Yeah, man. And I checked it out. It's called Keepsake. It comes out in I think it either came out a few days after this, few days before this. Math is hard in the timelines of release things.
Yeah.
It is either just coming out or just came out.
Yeah, right now I'm releasing it. The plan is November 8th.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's what I'm shooting for.
Hell yeah. Well, definitely looking forward to it when it finally comes out. For those of y'all that haven't heard it yet, I did get to listen to it beforehand, and I am super excited to get into it.
Okay.
Now, for those of you watching, you did hear a little snippet of the very first track in the intro of this episode, and it's a cool track. It's called "Born With It," and I mean, you just got right into it. Like, you hit play, and it was just you going for it.
Yeah. It's actually one of the first tracks that we recorded after the idea sparked to make a project. I've always wanted to make an album, but yeah, that one was one of the ones that kind of helped us decide that was the route that was kind of being molded. So.
Yeah. Well, it's a solid track. Like, it just kind of gets you into it. The beat doesn't come in for like a minute. Like, it's just you. You almost didn't need the beat though, because you were just locked in, but it sets the stage.
Yeah. Interesting too, because I mean, we could talk more about it in a minute, but we kind of ended up taking out, it was one of those tracks where it kind of started as a big beat, a big instrumental in the back. And it was one of those we ended up taking away.
Gotcha.
Adding. Okay. So yeah, that was kind of a last minute decision in a way.
Oh yeah. Well, it works out real well. And I guess I am curious to know, like, what made you want to start with that as the first track versus like the wild skit that happens after it?
It was, like I say, it was kind of one of the earlier tracks that we had been working on. And no one had heard it. I released a few singles off the album. So I wanted to start with something fresh. It also just had a lot to do with the trajectory of the album. It wasn't necessarily the first one recorded on it. More so as it was like one of the first that molded the sound for it. It was kind of one of those clicking parts that was like, okay, well, we got a couple of tracks recorded, but this one like pairs well with those, and also kind of the energy of it was something that I wanted the album to kind of represent.
Gotcha. Okay.
I wanted to come up with kind of like your classic hip hop album, and that song, I feel kind of harnessed that. So
yeah, well, you definitely nailed that.
Thanks, man.
And now, normally we jump into the next track, but like I said, it is kind of just that wild skit. And while we can't, it'd be hard for me to really talk about and break down as a track on its own. It is going to be the outro to this episode because it's bananas, y'all. It's going to be. I think I didn't time it, but I think it's all going to fit. I may let it run long just for funsies, but definitely stick around till the end for that. But let's go ahead and get on into the next track. This one's called "Last One's Left."
Waste away all my precious time for what I think I need. No, I'm getting close, so I'm driving. I don't even see the signs. I want the better things in life. Don't care if I gotta rest in peace. My teeth going for the throat this time. You can see it in my eyes.
All right, and we're back. That track was smooth as fuck.
Thank you.
It just, the low synth bass in particular, like it had this movement to it that it just fits so perfectly in the space where your voice isn't.
Yeah.
Like your movements, because you're pretty verbal, like rapper.
Yeah.
However you want to describe it. You, as a lyricist, you have a lot of words. You're very articulate.
Yeah.
The two different movements, I think, really added a lot. And you just bodied the track. Like, this is going to be a theme for all of these. I'm putting this out there now, but you came in and you nailed it. Also,
Thank you, sir.
I really appreciate the guitar solo.
Yeah.
Was that you?
That's my man Brooks Beatz.
Okay.
Hell
Yeah.
So the two main producers on the entire album, one obviously being my good friend Edward. He's the one who did the production on Born With It, since we previously talked about that. But yeah, Brooks Beatz did the production on this one. There was some talk about, maybe me putting a little vocal on the end of that where the guitar solo was. But the more I listened to it, I just kind of wanted it there, and I wanted the solo to shine on a production level, and that is him playing his instruments. One thing that he does well is integrates instruments in his beats, and I just think that is so cool. So I decided to let that one shine on its own.
Oh yeah,
and I'm glad I did, because it kind of needed to, in my opinion.
Well, and it's early on in the track too, so it's nice to kind of have a little bit of, not early on in the track, I'm sorry, early on in the album. So it's nice to have a little bit of that space, like kind of letting the instrumentals breathe.
I agree, yeah.
And not just like having to be you 100% of the time.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, I can pack a lot of lyrics into a beat a lot of the time. So it was like the opportunity presented itself to kind of leave a little bit of that breathing room on there. And so I definitely respected that.
Hell yeah.
So.
Well, now I want to know then, we're going to get a super easy one out of the way. How'd you pick the name?
I really just pulled it from like the verse. On the one part I say, if I had one bet, put it on the fam. We the last ones left, living artifacts. And just kind of like a shout out to my family and my friends and the community that I'm in, be it hip hop or graffiti or literally my family and my friends. But yeah, it's kind of like a little bit of a shout out to them, being that it's just like a thing of maybe a classic hip hop thing, as far as there being change, in the air all the time with these types of crafts, whether it's, graffiti or rap or, but kind of like the feeling of, being a little bit old school in the game, a little bit, coming from, a lot of more classic fundamentals of hip hop, and, definitely not against the growth of hip hop or like anything, developing and going different ways, especially experimentally, and just, trying to see what works. But it kind of came from a place of like, we're the last ones left that kind of experienced some of that underground hip hop, old school, just that realness, that rawness that was kind of so apparent in the game, say through the 90s type of deal. So it's kind of a take on that in a way. And then also, that's kind of the inspiration behind the lyric. But yeah, it was kind of like a question of, do I pull something from the chorus, but I kind of liked the last one's left lyric more. So I just kind of ended up going with that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, now I should have clarified the question better, but I wasn't about to cut you off. I really appreciate that answer. How'd you pick the name for the album?
That one was kind of just a matter of me thinking about it a lot, what I kind of wanted to say, how I felt about the album. I've always kind of thought about these albums and these bigger projects, and why I would make one. And it's kind of, I picture myself kind of like as an old man, like going back on, what I did, what I accomplished, what I got done, what I created, and to think about just kind of sitting there with the album years from now and having it just almost as like a little souvenir for myself, like a little gem, kind of just for keepsake, like to kind of carry with me, in the future. So that's kind of where it came from.
Well, I dig that. Thank you for sharing. And that's gonna tie into my wrap up at the end. So everybody put a pin in this bit right now, because we're definitely going to circle back to that. But let's go ahead and let's check out the next track. This one's called Try Anyway.
I got on top of it. Do nothing today. Tomorrow isn't promising. You can get a lot from chasing your accomplishments. Do nothing today. Tomorrow isn't promising. They told me that I wouldn't do it. I said, watch your shit. Do nothing today. Tomorrow isn't promising. Most of my memories, I just want to carry them in some of them.
All right, and we're back. Now, that track was a little bit tougher. Like the beat hit a little bit harder. Your delivery was a little more like a little more down note, a little more somber.
Oh yeah.
But the message was strong, and there was the mix was a little bit more like dynamic. That was something I noticed. Like it had a little bit more going on. There was the panning and the hook in particular. Like really grabbed. Like I just noticed those little things
for sure.
And it was also the first track you had with a feature, which I found out in between was Edward Bernier. Shout out.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great addition, like at the end of the first quarter. Like that this really it introduces something new, kind of like how the guitar solo did in the last track. And it just like keeps the ears fresh.
Thank you. Yeah. Man, that track, you're right. There's definitely a kind of a coldness to it.
Yeah.
And there's definitely no coincidence. We started that track in like the winter, it was, gloomy times. But yeah, I mean, that also, so that's Edward's production as well. That might be where some of the dynamic feeling might be coming from too. It was kind of one of my first kind of runarounds with a beat. Edward definitely helped me, kind of open up to the beat producing world, where it's like, he's like, well, why don't you get in here, mess with some sound, see what you want to add. So I was able to add a little sound to that as well. And definitely one of those tracks where we kind of just like sat there and experimented until we found something that so there was a lot of pushing and pulling, a lot of building, kind of from the ground up, and we end up finally coming up with something. But I mean, believe it or not, like from the time that we started the beat to the time we wrote to the time we recorded to the time we got it all edited, I mean, it was like, believe it or not, it was like damn near a year later.
I can believe it.
We dropped it, and I mean, I had never previous to that had an experience with a track taking that long, starting from scratch to, making sure the lyrics were good, fine-tuning every sound, making sure that we thought, I mean, all the way up until we called the track good, we were still listening to that track. But it was a great experience. Some tracks come to you a little smoother, some you got to kind of wrestle with a little more, and that was definitely one of those that it took a little bit of fight. So
I can imagine. Yeah, sometimes you just have to put it down so you can pick it up later when you have just like a different space.
Absolutely, yeah. Me and Edward took months just not listening to that one after it was like done enough to where we were like, okay, let's get our ears on some other
Yeah. Well, that like sometimes the track needs something that you can't give it, and you don't know what it is until it shows it to you.
Yeah,
You really like sometimes it's the music coming out of you, not you putting out the music. Yeah.
it was a good one though.
Yeah, and that actually that segues well into the next question. Was it all recorded and mixed and mastered in the same place?
Yeah, it was. We usually when we're recording, I'll at least when I go in, I want to get at least just all of the main vocal recorded, try to come up with something that's gonna stick. That way, I'm not coming back in on like a warmer day or something where my sinuses are a little more clear or like that sort of thing, because we all know recording artists, voices are always fluctuating, and we want to have to not compensate for that. And so I try to keep the recording sessions really close and get something down when we're sitting down and recording it. But yeah, it was all recorded over in Edward's studio, and we tried to keep that consistent.
Oh yeah. And then did he do the mixing and mastering as well?
Yes. We had a little bit of help from Brooks. We had some ears coming to the studio, just buddies. A few of our friends come through. We always kind of try to get multiple ears on the projects and stuff. So
Oh yeah. All right, well then let's go ahead and let's roll on into the next track. This one's called Stay a While.
In the middle of the flame it melt, but I'ma tell you what I know, if it could save you doubt. Don't ever tell them what you know, you'll get the same amount. Everyone pays some dues before they pave a route, but what's it all matter if you can't stay a while? Stay a while.
All right, and we're back. There was definitely something that hit different with that track. Like the beat itself really locked me in. And I was I tripping, or is there a little bit of metronome in the beat itself? That I'm pretty sure that sound was there.
It's crazy that you caught that, because it's like
I recognize that sound in particular.
I don't think it's a metronome, but we definitely that was one of those beats where I kind of I was getting more hands-on with the production side of it. So the amount I kind of started adding to some of the beats, and at a certain point I had to tell Edward, I'm like, I'm still learning this stuff. So I appreciate you involving me, but you're the master here. The prodigy. Let's stay in our seats, and but with respect to, I still want to learn this. So, but yeah, that was one of those. I think that was just a little bit of sound clashing, to be honest with you. There was a little ring in there. We ended up kind of turning down the low to kind of create a little bit of room. But yeah, that was kind of one of those things where, like, when I would go back and listen to it, I'm like, do you hear that ring? And like, Edward would be like, I hear it, but it's like, it should be fine. He was like, but let's look into it. And one of those little things that it was even more prominent before. So, but yeah.
Well, more just like I said, I heard a sound that, like, it definitely sounds like the metronome beat. It didn't sound like it was a metronome, but
you're talking, it might be like one of the drums or something. Yeah. But now I see what you're saying. Yeah.
That all aside, like your delivery on that one was just, it was extra steezy. It had a little bit more of a bite to it. It was a little more staccato. Like, you really felt like you were digging into your bag for that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to go as far as to say it is definitely one of the contending tracks on my list for favorite tracks so far.
That's awesome to hear, man. That one was, I would call it like unorthodox, but just like, it really captured a weirdness in hip hop that I wanted to create, almost an awkwardness. Like, I wanted people to hear that, like, the flow specifically too is like so kind of off the wall and kind of wild style, I would say. I guess.
And that was really what I did notice, but like it didn't feel loose. Like you were definitely dialed in on it. I think what was more interesting to me is that, because like I said before, your style is so locked in. You are very articulate.
Thank you.
That one, I think the edges kind of slid a little bit. So like where the words would end, how you would go in, like your attack on certain ones, and it almost felt more like it almost felt like you were just more locked in a way to where like you could let you almost like moved in the spaces of the beat in a really cool way, and it stood out. And it was a really, really cool experience.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. It was I just remember being like, I want this flow to be interesting to the people who listen to a lot of hip hop.
Oh, you nailed it.
Thank you. And yeah, I didn't want the flow to be boring. I wanted people to listen to it and be like, oh, this is interesting. This is different. This is, just kind of a little bit, that kind of that weirdness.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I don't know if I'd call it weird, but it definitely, like I said, there was this little extra in it.
Okay.
It was really enjoyable.
Maybe a little
really
flair there.
Yeah, flair.
Yeah,
there we go.
Flair.
There we go. That was it for sure.
Yeah.
Little bit of finesse.
Yeah. I definitely wanted there to be some tracks that were like that,
Oh yeah.
Add a little bit of that personality in there. So.
Yeah. Now, getting back into the questions, how long did it take for you to write and record all the tracks
for the whole album? When we first started, it wasn't an idea that it was going to be an album. So I believe one of the first tracks was Noob Saibot, and then we did a couple of more, and then I think once I got to like Born With It and then Stay a While, I started to see, okay, some of these sounds don't sound bad together. And I would kind of keep them in my phone while I worked, and I would listen to them. So we were probably 3 or 4 tracks in by the time I even decided that I wanted to develop it into an album. But at that point, that must have been like 3 years ago at this point. So,
Okay.
I mean, the album basically took us 3 years to fully curate and edit and listen to and just everything. So
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not the speed of the race; it's finishing it.
Yeah.
There's a proverb in there somewhere.
Absolutely. And it wasn't like, I didn't take the take of like, oh, the next 5 tracks that I make are going on this album.
Yeah. You were just making music.
Studios, doing other things. Even recorded some that just didn't make the album.
Yeah.
Whether it's because it just didn't sound like it belonged on it, or just whatever the case. But yeah, I definitely, once I found a direction for the album, I kind of had an idea like what would stick and what wouldn't. And
Okay.
So.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead. We're gonna jump into the middle for these next few tracks, and this next one coming up is Thunderstorm.
In a large amount. If only I knew back then what I'm knowing now, I might just show them how to hold the crown, never fold in doubt. Spitting doper than the coke that's in your snout. Don't make them spell it out. You gotta fill in the blanks like Ralph. News say thunderstorms up here in the upper north. West on my palm, been that way since I was born.
All right, we're back. Oh man, that one had just so much depth. Like especially the vocal sample. Something about it just really locked me in. The heavy low end from the piano all really came together and set this mood that I thought was really cool right from the get. But it wasn't until your hook that I realized that it was supposed to be like a rainy day. And once that image was painted for me, I mean, first of all, today it happened to be a rainy day.
Yeah.
So it really, at least in the first half. So like it created this imagery for me that was just really powerful, and it just
That's awesome.
brought something. And then
I always love when like that's created. That's like a huge part of what I try to kind of encompass in there. So
Yeah, and he definitely nailed it with that one. And then to find out that it's it's more of it's like a locationally focused track. I think that definitely ties, because Portland's not known for sun all the time, but like it kind of gave it this extra emphasis.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's the production on that is my brother Lab Syndicate, and yeah, it's a very special track. That was one that kind of came out of the blue. It was almost like there's these times, I'm sure some of the artists out there can relate, where, you're working on a project and sometimes you might hit a little wall, or you might have this moment in time where you're like, well, what's the next thing?
Yeah.
And, that's the perfect time to start looking around. And that's exactly what I did. I started going through my brother Lab Syndicate, started going through his catalog and everything, and that beat just jumped out to me right away. So I started listening to it over and over and over again. And then I just kind of thought about it. I just, kind of got the tempo dialed in a little bit, a little loosely, and then, just kind of thought about what I wanted to say on it. And I think that I heard that I kind of saw that imagery too when I was writing to it. Is I just kind of heard the vibe of the rainy day, kind of.
Yeah.
And yeah, the lyrics were able to come to me pretty quick. So
yeah. And that actually segues well into the next question. And you already kind of touched on this, so we can breeze through this answer if you want to. But was there like a vision or a direction for the album as it was coming together?
Yeah, a little bit. It was kind of revolving around keys. The reason that I wanted to choose that is I didn't really want there to be like a tight knit theme of the overall album, more so a lot of different themes. So a lot of it just kind of came from like, okay, well, what would I want to... I kind of like took it a step at a time. Maybe things I was experiencing at the time, little like answers or solutions that I find to little problems I may have been experiencing, or maybe just something that I'd want to leave someone with. Some of it might come off as advice, hopefully not too much, but more so just either give them something to think about, or give them a feeling to kind of think about or feel at the time. And a lot of it was just relevant to what I was experiencing in those places in time.
Oh yeah. So, oh yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
All right, now let's go ahead and let's jump on into the next track. This one's called Either Way.
I was made to believe that onto the ADE ain't supposed to be shit. Maybe I need it to push me further when I'm defeated. That gives me a reason to put together the broken pieces. So here's my thesis, and you can burn it after reading, cause I'm on a mission, and nothing here is for the keeping.
All right, and we're back. Now, before we go any further, we've shouted out Edward so many times on this, but I do want to take a quick moment, shout him out, because he is definitely the man. He just put out a new video recently called Pagan Poetry. Go check it out if you haven't. It's a super solid music video. I think you're all going to like it.
Yeah, shot by Alabaster. They got me involved with that. It was super dope. I'm not much of an actor or nothing, but it's just really cool to just be on set and take 2, take 3, take 4.
Run it again.
Yeah, it's just it was just a lot of fun.
So, oh yeah. But now that we've gotten his shout out of the way, getting back into you, and that track was cool. It was special. Like, for being at the end of the third, it's really refreshing to still have change ups happening in the album, but also like your vocals had this subtle melodic element to it. There was this different, the cadence kind of changed up a little bit, and it really set the tone, especially like the hook, which was really, it was kind of short, it was kind of sweet, but it really just gave something extra. And it was a cool track. And I know Edward was on an earlier one, but that was the one where like his voice really stood out. Like, it was very apparent it was him, and like with the effect on it, and just the chemistry that you two had for that track really came together.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I completely agree. That was one cool thing that your question just now, or maybe it was an observation, but I wasn't really writing a lot of the hooks like until I was in the studio. A lot of the time I kind of wanted to have that be something where, you know, I'm listening to it through the big speakers. I'm in that essence, I'm in the element, because like recording in the studio is probably one of my favorite parts of all of this. Yeah, so I had 2 verses ready, and just came in, and you know, the question came to rise after a while, well, you know, what about the hook? Do you got any ideas for that?
Yeah.
And you know, we kind of discussed it, and he was like, well, you want me to give it a shot, you know, see what I could do, you know, write it up, and I'll show you later, and you know, you can approve or whatever. And you know, he wrote something up, recorded it, had it to me in a few days, and I just absolutely loved it, like right off the bat. And not only did I love it right off the bat, but I just, as I kept listening to it, I just loved it even more. And that was one that I felt like was kind of unorthodox in a way too. Just even like subject matter, just very original. And I just loved how original that hook was on that track. The melodicness on the verses may have just came from, I think I was kind of trying to use a little bit of a different flow on that one, maybe something a little more updated than the previous tracks, because even though I wanted it to be a classic hip-hop album, I still believe in pushing the development of the creativity and doing new things with the music, and kind of taking those risks. So it was definitely an opportunity for me to kind of like mess around with some of those new cadences and those new flows, and that's when I started wanting to do that more. I felt like there was a foundation kind of laid for the album.
Gotcha.
And we had that backbone, you know, and it was time to start shaking things up a little bit.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Well, then, you know, there's definitely been melodic approaches in hip hop since early on, you know, like that's always kind of been an element for sure.
Absolutely.
But definitely it was a little more present for your delivery in that track for sure.
Thank you.
Now I guess I kind of want to ask a bigger picture question. Because, you know, in this day and age, and again, this is something you've already kind of touched on, but I really just want to focus on it for a moment. But in the here and now, like, you know, the whole singles a week, you know, 2 tracks a month, like put it out as fast as you can, this is it. What ultimately made you decide to go full album?
I think it was I just really have always wanted to do an album. I've even attempted to in the past, but just didn't quite get enough tracks up on the board for it to be a full blown album in the past, or just little things that kind of held me back. But yeah, this honestly, once I realized that I did have a good little catalog going, I was happy that it was kind of that classic sound that I was going for. When I did try to make attempts in the past, some of it would be, I really only tried like once to do an album before, which ended up being the Radeskiii EP. It's not even on like major like distribution as far as like Spotify or like Apple Music or anything. It is still up on SoundCloud, but it was years ago. I just felt like it was not as pinpointed as I would have liked it to be, so I ended up putting it as an EP, and then it was also only like 22 minutes long.
Okay. Which
didn't really set well with me calling it an album at that point. I just felt like I needed a bigger body of work, but just didn't quite have those resources to really harness like a consistent enough sound, or like it could have been that, or you know, my style was definitely more developed when I took this route of doing this album. So
yeah, very much so. Hell yeah.
Thanks.
All right, well then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna jump to the last 2 tracks now. And this next one coming up is Eulogy.
Can't shackle me. Seems like every other week's a new beast that I'm battling. Gotta make it great, got a gang of them after me. Tell them that I got it. Yeah, I got it. Master of the trade, often got a trick up his sleeve. Last to get a plate, you know everyone's gotta eat. There's still so much I won't say, cause it ain't.
All right, we're back. Now, I want to start this one off a little bit differently because it's well documented on the show. I'm not a big words guy. Lyrics don't permeate my listening experience in the way that a handful of other people's it will, especially in like the early listens. But there was just something so captivating about the hook on this track in particular. And it's rad because you open the track with it, first of all, but it didn't feel like the hook when it first happens. So when it came back, it hit different. And there was a different part that like hit in the beginning that does like hits like that. Sorry, let me say it again. There was a part in the beginning that hit, and then there was a part when it comes back. Different parts lead you back to it. But there was that line that there's still so much I won't say because it ain't true to me. Yeah. And that just, I don't know why, but that one just connected with me so much. And it made me re-listen to the track way more than the rest of the album.
That's awesome, man. I love that. Yeah, it's funny you say that, actually. You pick up on a lot of things, a lot of really, a lot of details that I kind of want people to pick up on. But yeah, like, sometimes I'll write a track and the first few lines will sound more like a hook to me. Like I'll hear a ring in it, but then I'll just kind of base my first verse, like it kind of like almost goes together with it, almost making the hook sound like the intro. And there's definitely a little something I did there, if I can remember correctly, where I think the first hook has like one less layer than the second hook.
Yep. Yeah, I did notice it was thicker the second time around.
Yeah, and that was all like on purpose. The hook on that one, hooks were a little tricky for me. Nowadays, I have a little bit of an easier time. I've kind of collected some tools in the toolbox to get around that a little bit more. One of them being, writing them in the studio. It helps me out a lot. Yeah. That one I actually didn't write in the studio, though. That was just like me, in my little workshop, just kind of writing. But yeah, the hook sounded like bars to me, kind of. So I just kind of like worked that angle in a way to where it definitely, like, I think part of it too is that I did write the hook first on that one for sure. So it was one of those that I wanted the lyrics to pair really well with the beat. And I was writing a lot of acapella stuff and kind of guessing and checking and going back to the drawing board with the tempo in my mind and kind of doing the acapella thing before that. So like some of the earlier tracks in it kind of more based off of my like metronome in my head, and then kind of like fitting it. There was a little bit of that in the beginning of the project, but by the time I got to Eulogy, I was like, I want to write to this beat. I want to like stick close to it as I'm writing and really just encompass like, just making sure that it's like very dialed in with the beat. So.
Oh yeah. Well, you definitely nailed it.
Thanks, man.
And I'm a big fan of that track. Like it's pretty much tied for me with Stay a While for favorite track on the album.
That's awesome.
But since we are, this is the second to last main question, I'm curious to know, what are some of your favorite tracks?
Yeah, man, I mean,
and I know it's a loaded question.
No.
Your album.
Absolutely. I have answers for it. Right now, it's Last Ones Left because it's just, I think it was one of the last ones I put up. And I gotta say, man, I mean, like, Better Luck Next Year is one of my favorites too, because, I mean, just, I don't know, it just, it came so naturally, and it was one of those that kind of worked with me a little more. What I wanted to say kind of just poured out rather than me having to like, sit here and what do I want to say on this?
Oh yeah.
But also, I gotta say, I mean, maybe, I also have like this love for Try Anyway. I think how hard we fought on that track, it's like, I know that's a tough one, you know. It's like that was a tough cookie right there. Like that was, but it like grew on me, you know. So it was like, yeah, it was kind of like your kid that like gives you the most trouble, but you end up liking them the most, you know.
I mean, I don't have any children, so I can't agree on that one, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I've just seen that. I only have one kid myself, so I don't even have that experience.
I was gonna say you have to like them by default.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get on into the last track. And you already said it, but would you like to introduce the last one?
I think it would be Better Luck Next Year.
But when I pen it in, they're gonna give me the blessing again. Ain't on the freshman list, won't catch me standing next to them. I push the pedal until my name's embedded in the cement. Same old lows, but it's just a different day. Here we go again. Lately I've been trying to ease my
All right,
mind.
we've made it to the end. That was the perfect ending to the album. Like it was like a little bit of everything I enjoyed from all the tracks we talked about. And it had something. That sample in the middle, I think, really brought it home too. But it was one of the strongest beats on the album. And I appreciate that it didn't outshine any of the other tracks. Like you didn't end with the best for last type of thing, at least from my experience. But it was such a good track. Like it just kind of emphasized that you were able to finish strong and really like kind of give the listening experience enough care that you weren't like, all right, it's the last one, let's just phone it in with this one. Like, you know, like you even said, it was one of the tracks you really enjoyed the most.
Absolutely.
Just it was a really good way to complete the album.
Thank you, man. Yeah. Again, like one of my favorites. The beat was just so fucking cool. Like when I got it, I was like, no way he gave me this one, man. Like, I mean, I was like just so excited about it. That's Brooks Beatz again. And yeah, man, he definitely carried his weight as a producer on this album. And yeah, I just I had that kind of like fuck it attitude a little bit, like
Fair.
when I was writing, but once that kind of started developing into just something that I felt was so cool sounding, more ideas kind of poured from that too. And like that's also kind of where the sample idea came from and stuff. I mean, me and Edward helped me put that one together a lot too. We spent a little time on that. The lyrics themselves did kind of, you know, come to light a little bit easier than some of the other tracks, but that could have been because I was a little warmed up by then. You know, we had been working on this thing for a while. And yeah, it was kind of like, I guess you could say it was a second wind because instead of feeling tired by the end of the album, you mentioned finishing strong. It definitely got me re-excited about it, especially once I got that beat and everything. It was like, oh wow, this is like kind of, it goes perfect with the album, but it's also like a new flavor. And the sample actually comes from a movie, Catch-22. I don't know if you're familiar with it, about like a war pilot. For those who haven't seen it, it's a great movie. They actually remade it, but I pulled the sample from the original movie, made like, I think like in the 60s or something like that. Yeah, me and Edward sat there for maybe an hour or two just looking through stuff, trying to find something fitting. And when we found it, we were both very excited, and I was excited. I really wanted to get, you know, some samples of that. Of that stature on there, like something old sounding, something vintage sounding, something with a little bit of rawness behind it. And yeah, I really like that little part in the middle. It's really cool.
I mean, the track in general is super strong.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right, now with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and share my final thoughts with the album. I'm letting you all know now. It goes a little long, so bear with me, but we're going to get through it. So the first thing I want to say, the album has instant classic vibes. Like it feels like something that I've been listening to forever already.
Hell yeah, man.
But it
Good to
also
hear it.
it gives off an energy that is going to become one in your catalog that people are going to refer back to. Like, so when people are talking about Radeskii's music, I think this is one that's going to get called back to and reference even long past when it comes out. And it's good. It's direct, it's tight, it's arranged well, it has all the right elements in all the right places. It's definitely a no skip album. Like, it feels like a very complete body of work that, I mean, you should be really proud of. And I'm personally really excited to see how everybody responds to it. But to wrap it up, I just want to say that it feels like a serious album made by a serious artist. And I think anybody who's familiar with the sounds and the effort that goes into it, they're going to respect it. And I really appreciate you taking the time to bring it here, share your side of the story, and just share it with me.
Heck yeah, man. I'm very honored for this opportunity, and the fact that you took time to listen to it and dissect it, and I mean, thank you. That's incredible. And it's good to have a credible person in my corner to also voice that. I definitely took the making of it very seriously. I wanted to just make sure that it was good, man.
Yeah. Well, you nailed it.
Thank you.
You nailed it. You did a great job. But with that being said, let's go ahead and start wrapping this up. Why don't you go ahead, look at the camera, tell everybody how they can find you.
Yeah, just type in Radeskiii, Radeskii. You can find me on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I got the artist pages all up there. When it is time to release the album, as long as you're following me on one of those things, you will definitely see it. And yeah, as long as you type in Radeskiii into any of those, should be able to be connected and up to date on everything I'm doing. So,
oh yeah. And then any other plugs, any other shout outs, anybody else
man.
While you're on here?
I'll keep it kind of about the album this time. I just want to shout out, all the producers that took the time to work with me. Again, my boy Edward Bernier, he took a lot of time to curate the vision, help me build it, develop it, and all while doing his own art, which is amazing. And Brooks Beatz, man, his production is crazy. It's only getting better and better. I'm excited to hear what he's going to be doing. Boy 86 Grundy, we're going to keep rocking and doing our thing. He definitely has some music that he's going to be releasing. And, Lab Syndicate, of course, my brother. We got some things that we got in the works as well. So just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. There was a couple of kind of nomad producers on there that I'm not really fully in contact with, but I still feel the need to shout them out. Dead Brains, super dope producer. He did Either Way. He did that beat. And then Darrell Banks, that was the producer of Eulogy. And so, anybody who lended their ears to the album, yourself included. Yeah, man, it was just really great to have people care about something I was trying to put together. So shout out to all of you guys for helping me put that thing together, man. And I'm really happy with it personally and excited to share it with the world. So
hell yeah. That was very concise, put together shout out list. All right. Now, with that being said, I've got one last question to go. But before we do, I'm going to steal the camera for just a second. As always, y'all, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. And one more shout out to the Brothers Apothecary, Ronald Records, and Portland Water. Thanks for keeping us hydrated. And with that being said, the final question. And now this is kind of in the vein of the usual final question I have, but I've changed it up a little bit for this. What is an album that inspired you during the making of this album?
Oh man, it's crazy. I love that question because in the early stages of curating this thing, there was an album being dropped by Atmosphere by the name of Word. And I just felt like on their album, I was already planning on, creating a hip hop album. But as I'm kind of in the midst of trying to kind of figure this out and leverage, the steps, they dropped that Word album, and I felt like it was obvious to me that they were taking it back on that one. And they were kind of, making like a throwback classic hip hop album. And I just thought it was just like the coolest time to do something like that. A lot of their albums previous were just like really experimental sounding and very different sounding. And so like, start listening to this album that they dropped, the Word album, and just hearing those classic hip hop album fundamentals as I'm starting my journey into going for that. Yeah. It was just like kind of cool because they're so old in the game. They've done so much with their music. And for them to choose that time to make an album like that, it's very serendipitous. It was exciting. Yeah. So.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Again,
of course. Thank
you so much for taking the time and sharing your experience with the album.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah. Absolutely. It's been great being here. Thanks for, again, bringing the opportunity to light to really talk about this thing, man, because it's doing a lot. So.
Oh, yeah. All right. With that being said, this has been another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox. I'm Jimmy.
Radeskiii.
And we're signing off. Later, y'all.
Damn. Good morning, everybody. You are dialed into the morning show with DJ Keynote on KS 96.8. Today, we got our first guest, Radeskiii. How you feeling, Radeskiii? You ready?
Good, man. Chilling.
Kick some bars for these people just waking up?
Yup, let's get it.
You ready to force your narrative on these poor people at 8 a.m. in the morning?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, it's not too early for this type of upbeat energy. The streets never sleep.
Good, bro.
There's some dark shit out there, man.
Are we still gonna do the verse?
Yes, yeah. 3, 2.
Yeah.